To Naples, Italy, and speak to Luigi Daniele, Associate Professor in International Humanitarian and International Criminal Law at the University of Molise. Luigi, thank you so much for your time. What does the law say about these kind of forced evacuation orders and the responsibility on those who are giving the orders?
Yes, thanks, Adnan. There is no such thing under international law as evacuation order. These orders are forced displacement orders. Forced displacement is a crime against humanity under international law. And we have been seeing this since day one of this genocidal assault on Gaza. Under international law, there could be warnings given to the civilian population to spare their lives. But Israel, its rogue regime in particular, are using this language to give a semblance of concern for the civilian population, where indeed their tactic is to exterminate and displace the civilian population in the assumption that this is a form of pressure against Hamas. In the end, this is not only unlawful and criminal, it is also completely counterproductive strategically, because by committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocidal conduct every week or every day in the last 2 years, they are only reinforcing the Palestinian armed groups. Of course, inflicting criminal and intolerable suffering on the civilian population only render this civilian population forced to recur to armed means if they want to defend themselves. But Israeli generals have made no mystery of the fact that they consider the entirety of the Gaza civilian population as a sort of articulation of a terrorist infrastructure. So they are doing what they have promised at the beginning. They are flattening, they are depopulating, they are exterminating. And that's why there is a near unanimous consensus in the international community of scholars that this is genocide. The genocide not only by killing, but also by inflicting conditions of life calculated to destroy at least a substantial part of the Palestinian national group. And now it's not only a part. The aim is obviously depopulating the entirety of northern Gaza, pushing, concentrating survivors in so-called safe areas that are already deserts of rubble and people buried under the rubble of their houses. So this is genocide by old standards.
Luigi, you're taking us in a direction that I wanted to go anyway, and the word is proportionality. Talk to us about proportionality. When we see Israeli airstrikes hitting and destroying an entire building, with the Israeli justification being in one apartment, there is a member of Hamas. Talk to us about proportionality. We're seeing these high-rise residential buildings being destroyed because Israel says it's being used by Hamas.
Yes, we have called this, with other scholars, humanitarian camouflage. So the use of words taken from international humanitarian law, subverted in their meaning and function, not to protect civilians, but to kill them en masse. Proportionality under international humanitarian law means that each individual attack, even if it's directed at a legitimate military objective, is nonetheless prohibited when it can be expected to cause excessive incidental harm to civilians. So the lie, the pseudo-legal doctrine of the Israeli army is that if there is any object, any person that has been touched or will be touched by Palestinian armed groups, then 100 civilians, dozens and dozens of children killed in the course of targeting such object or person are just collateral damage. This is an apartheidist conception of IHL, systematically devaluing the life of Palestinian civilians as if they were inert matter. And this has become one of the constitutive elements of this genocidal annihilation, because so-called human shield by human shield, so-called collateral damage by collateral damage, the entirety of Gaza, its civilian population, the objects indispensable for the survival of the people, become a sum of shields and collateral damage. That is to say, destroyable, killable. That's how we have arrived at this intolerable point, and that's why in particular Western governments, are betraying their legal duties and their own constitutions by not imposing sanctions and the total arms embargo. Which
Luigi,
should end this.
sorry to interrupt you, just briefly, because we're already going over time, but what you're saying is too important to ignore. There is a case going on at The Hague at the International Criminal Court. It's an in absentia hearing for the very first time. They're hearing case of allegations of war crimes committed by a Ugandan warlord. Could this be significant for Benjamin Netanyahu, for whom, of course, there is an arrest warrant issued by the ICC, and there is no way ever he is going to appear in The Hague? Could this be an important moment, what's happening with the Ugandan guy, Joseph Kony?
Absolutely, this could be an important precedent on condition that all the relevant actors uphold the law as a tool based on equality. So whatever applies to any other suspect of war crimes should apply also to Benjamin Netanyahu and Gallant, and hopefully soon for Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. If we don't push together as scholars, as civil society organizations, for applying the law equally, irrespective of the nationality of the suspect, without fear or favor, we are dismantling its very nature of law. And there are more and more components of the same Israeli civil society that are demanding so, that are demanding them help for them from abroad, from international institutions and human rights organizations, because they are themselves victims, as the Israeli hostages, of a government that is dismantling every legal duty and the idea itself that there are legal and moral restraints in the waging of war. This risks to push us all toward the future of war, of exterminations everywhere.
Luigi Daniele, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.